What is up, Pitt fans? Thank you so much for tuning in to Inside the Panthers on YouTube. My name is Stephen Thompson, coming at you with another Inside Pitt practice report. The Panthers wrapped up their third practice of the spring today, and it was a big day. First day of full pads, and you can tell this is a fun day for everyone, really. I mean, that might sound obvious, but you think about how little time there is to actually play real live football, even for college and professional players, the opportunities for you to step onto a field in full pads and really hit someone and to really play this game at the same level of physicality that it's always played at, that it's meant to be played at, those opportunities are relatively limited. Most of the time in practices, you are controlled and regulated and contained. And today, the Panthers took one step towards unleashing their guys a little bit, and it led to some fun. It led to some physicality. Obviously, the pads were popping, and there's really no sound like it. And it's fun to be on the field and to be watching practice when that happens, and to see these guys who are all great athletes. They're big dudes to run full speed at each other and really give it everything that they've got. Was a lot of fun, and it's interesting, and it is frightening and fascinating all at the same time. So I love seeing these guys hit each other. I love seeing them be on the field together, and I think you learn a lot, from this first day of full pads. You see who's not willing to hold back, who's really ready to hit someone. And we saw a real physical period of practice right off the bat when we first showed up and stepped onto the fields at the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex. Right after they stretched, the Panthers went into a special teams drill. It involved a returner, a blocker, and then an attempted tackler. And the way the drill worked was you started with the returner about, maybe 20, 25 yards back, maybe closer to 15 yards back. Then you've got the blocker and the tackler, the defender, uh, positioned about 10 yards from each other. And the goal, obviously, for the blocker to create a lane for their returner inside, a narrow lane demarked by a set of cones, and then for the tackler to stop him, to get hands on a guy, to wrap a guy up. And it was just fun watching guys take on blocks first, engage those blocks, try to make hits. It was awesome, and it brought out a ton of great energy from guys. There were a couple standouts, guys who had fantastic reps. I mean, Cruz Brookins, a guy that we've talked about, and that has been talked about. Javon McIntyre brought him up yesterday, said that that guy is a playmaker, that he is, really up next in that safety room. He's taking those second string reps behind Donovan McMillan right now, and he's really standing out as a physical guy. And he looks like he belongs. I mean, this is a guy with the body. He's only a redshirt freshman at this point, not even done with his first year in college, but he looks like he's ready to step onto the field immediately. Um, Pat Narduzzi was highly complimentary of Brookins. He called him a dude. He gave him the distinguished football player mark and elaborated a little bit that, you know, a lot of guys are good athletes, but not necessarily good football players. Brookins has the instincts, the smarts, the natural ability to be a football player. He is not just an athlete; he is a pure football player. And he's been really impressing, not just his coaches, but his teammates as well. And he laid a couple big hits during reps in this special teams drill led by Jake Bronowski, the new special teams coordinator, tight ends coach. He was really fired up, bringing the energy. After every good rep, he was jumping up and down, running up to guys. He was all over them, congratulating him. Other guys who stood out, Montravius Lloyd, a young running back, really big guy. I believe he's north of 200 pounds. I don't have my roster on me, but he is, I think, closer to 215. He's big. Jesse Anderson, another real physical safety that Pat Narduzzi said is a fast riser, a guy who, if they can keep him focused, keep him, channeling that good energy, that powerful energy on the right path, that he could be a real special player. He laid a couple big hits as one of the tacklers. Derek Davis was really good in the same role. That guy is physical and really strong. He's a great athlete, but he put that to good use. Jules Goff, also another running back, a true freshman, an early enrollee. He had a couple nice hits in pursuit of the ball as well. I don't, think of him as necessarily a powerful guy. He's been talked about more for his speed, but he laid a couple big hits as well. Nigel Maynard, a freshman corner, was battling in there as well. So was Javante Royal, a guy who was flip-flopped from DB to wide receiver to back to DB. Royal, I think, looked really interesting just because he's got that great frame. He's got such long arms. You wonder position switch, how is he going to fit in? Pat Narduzzi told us last year that he's a guy who could really fit in on special teams. But I think he's interesting as just a pure defensive back, especially with that frame. We'll see how it ends up on the field, but he had a great day running those special teams drill, and you can tell that he's a physical guy, not shying away from contact. And it was just a fun day being up that close and watching the guys respond to that signal, to this landmark, to this milestone of spring ball, the first day of pads. It's when the stuff starts to get real. It's the last day before spring break, so the Panthers won't practice again until after next week, until they return on, I believe, a Monday is their next practice. I'll have to double check that, but it's a long time before the Panthers will be able to step back onto the field. And excuse me, I just checked their next practice is on the 19th. So that is not next Tuesday, but 2 Tuesdays from now. It's a long time. The point still stands. And you could tell that guys were really eager to give their all and kind of lay it all out because they knew it was going to be a while before they were able to do anything like this again. Want to move on a little bit to talk a little bit more about the offense and specifically the quarterbacks. Pat Narduzzi said he's really pleased with the progress of the offense. It's really coming along. The guys, they had their kind of first 11 on 11 periods today in full pads, and he was really impressed with what the offense was able to do. He said they've come a long way, and he thinks that this offense is the unit that's taken the bigger strides so far in spring ball. He said the Panthers offense was really doing things to his defense that usually don't happen. Which we had talked before, at the beginning of this week about how the offense looked a little shaky, at least from an operation standpoint early. But according to Pat Narduzzi, it's coming along. The guys are meshing into their roles and becoming a little bit more smooth. And you can see kind of the results of that offense starting and coming through. And he highlighted the attitude as well. It's just a different feeling he feels like in that offense. A couple other notes, kind of, narrowing our focus a little bit. The Panthers have started using, wireless communication in the helmets. It's a new rule that was just passed by the NCAA. Football coaches, mainly the offensive coordinator, will be able to use their headsets, put a microphone inside of one player, the helmet of one player on each side of the ball or when they're on the field. So as Narduzzi pointed out, most teams will go with their quarterback and their middle linebacker. They got to practice with it a little bit today. They had never done that before. I remember I was standing on the sidelines, and their two, I believe they're student assistants, but assistant coaches or support staff were fiddling with the headsets right before they were about to go into a live period before they kicked the media out, and they were testing them out before. One yelled to the other and said, "Hey, put it on, test it out. We've never done this before. We've got to make sure that they actually work." It's interesting to see how those operations kind of change. It's supposed to address some of the sign stealing concerns that people had last year. Remember at the Michigan scandal, Connor Stallions, all that. They believe that if you do what the NFL does, if you've got guys, coaches talking directly to players in their ears, it makes it harder to steal signals, makes it harder to uh, steal information from signals or from what the other team is doing, because a coach is talking directly to his teammates or to his players, excuse me, who can then relay it into the huddle. So Pat Narduzzi was really fired up about it. He was interested to see how it would go, see how it would affect the sign stealing and things of that nature. But some new changes coming to the offense and coming to college football as a whole. The other thing I want to note is the quarterback situation. Pat Narduzzi gave a little bit of insight into what his quarterbacks have been doing, what he's liked, what he hasn't liked from his quarterbacks so far. Nate Yarnell still established as that QB1, but today was the first time Narduzzi hinted that at what the real, you know, what the real standing, what the separation between quarterbacks on the depth chart is right now. Nate Yarnell, QB1 coming into spring camp, that was declared long before the Panthers stepped onto the field, long before they really had, I believe they had an offensive coordinator, but Narduzzi said that Yarnell's the QB1. Cade Bell echoed that sentiment as well. This is the guy that is leading the group. He's taking those QB1 snaps. There isn't really an open competition for that spot. The last that we had heard, but today it was interesting hearing Narduzzi talk about the challenges that Yarnell is getting from guys like Christian Veillere, and he even brought up Eli Holstein, the freshman Alabama transfer as well, a guy that Narduzzi said was dinged up a little bit from winter workouts, still at about 90%, but still working and full go at this point for the Panthers in practice. So it's kind of the first time that we've gotten a hint that Yarnell is not a lock necessarily to be the starter on opening day against Kent State on August 31st. He's the favorite. He's the leading guy right now. I think they are confident in him, but they are not just going to hand it to him. They are going to make sure that he doesn't rest on his laurels, that he doesn't get I guess senioritis for lack of a better term, that he doesn't get complacent during spring and fall camp. They're going to make sure that he knows that they believe in Bayer too, that they've got options in Holstein, that Yarnell is going to have to really earn his spot, that he is going to have to prove that he is continually prove that he's the best quarterback on this roster if he wants to remain the starter. I think it's interesting. I mean, you kind of figured that Bayer, the only other guy with starting experience on this roster, would be the backup. But Holstein, it's interesting that he kind of has emerged as the QB3. I suppose it makes sense. He's been in college for a year. Obviously the recruiting pedigree, played at Alabama for a season, and now he comes to Pitt. So, uh, but I didn't necessarily figure that at least right away Holstein would be mentioned as kind of another one of those guys challenging Yarnell. It's not Ty Diefenbach or even Julian Duggar. I mean, those guys, uh, Narduzzi said are doing a good job, but they are freshmen. These guys are a week into practices of their college career, and they've got a little ways to go. Holstein, he said, meanwhile, is kind of up in that top tier, and maybe it appears looks like he's pushing for that. It has maybe been slotted in as kind of that QB3 role for right now. They are obviously the second string, but I think it's interesting. Holstein comes in, they recognize his talent, they recognize that he's got even a little bit more experience than a guy like a Duggar, and I think they're still looking at Ty Diefenbach as a bit of a project as well. So a little bit of a defined shape of the quarterback room starting to emerge for the Panthers so far during the spring. To wrap this video up, I want to talk a little bit about the other side of the ball. I want to talk about the secondary. I think it's an interesting dynamic in that group, in that level of the defense. It's pretty much the opposite of what it was last year. You go in with three established corners that you feel really good about, that are good players that have been in the system for a long time. And meanwhile, you're looking for safeties. You're looking for guys to fill in for Eric Howell and Brandon Hill, who had left for the NFL at that time. This year, it's completely flipped. It's you have no corners. You graduate Marquez and AJ Woods and MJ Devonshire leaves for the draft, but at the same time, you've got three safeties that you feel really good about as well. You got Donovan McMillan, Javon McIntyre, and PJ O'Brien. I think that's a real good safety tandem. I think they're going to get better. I think they were pretty good last year, especially with the emergence of McMillan as the team's leading tackler, a real physical guy, and then you've got a little bit of a Swiss Army knife in McIntyre, who can kind of do it all. And then you got O'Brien, who's really their best cover guy, I would figure, at the safety spot, and a real electric player with the ball in his hands. He can create some turnovers. Um, you're still looking for corners now. And it's an interesting dynamic there because it's just a ton of unproven names. One name did emerge though from our conversations with Pat Narduzzi, and then he brought up this player later for an interview with the media. But Rylan Gandy is about as close to a lock to be a starter on opening day as it gets. I mean, Pat Narduzzi said if you had to name a starter right now, if they played a game tomorrow, it would be Rylan Gandy starting at one of those corner spots, and they would go from there. Gandy is a redshirt sophomore, 6 foot, 180 pounds from Buford, Georgia. We'd kind of heard a little bit about him. We had heard that he was a guy that the Panthers had their eye on, that they were looking at him, going back a couple years, that they believed that this guy had potential, that he was a fast riser, and now we're really seeing him start to get his opportunity. And it was interesting talking to Gandy, him saying, I thought I was there. I thought I was ready 2 years ago to or even a year ago to step in and be on the same level as Woods and Williams and Devonshire, and he wasn't. He had to trust his coaches a little bit. It's frustrating to have to sit for so long, especially when you see older guys in front of you. It can seem like you're fighting an uphill battle that you're never going to win, that you're just not going to be in that mix for a starting cornerback job. And he had to be real patient and wait for his turn. And now that he has it, he seems really eager. I love his long arms. I love his speed. He's working on getting a little faster. He ran track in high school, but I think there are the beginnings of another good corner here, but he is at least leading the field for now. You talk about that other spot, and there are some interesting names in the mix. I mean, I'm high on Taman Lineham, the transfer from Nebraska, who I think could be really good. I love his frame. I love his experience. I mean, it's limited from his time at Nebraska, but I think I think it's useful, and I think it's definitely different from what everyone else kind of on that list of DBs has. I mean, it's a limited group. If you'll forgive me, I'm looking through the group of guys. I mean, Tamarian Crumpley is there, a redshirt junior who really hasn't played much defense at all to speak of. There's Rashad Battle, a redshirt senior. You like his size as well at 6'3" and 200 pounds, but not much experience for him too, especially dealing with injuries. Jesse Anderson, we mentioned, is a guy who Pat Narduzzi shouted out as a riser. Javante Royals there as well, but with the position switch, it's kind of up in the air. Shadarian Harrison is interesting. We've heard about him, I think, last spring and maybe a little bit during the summer. But not a ton of experience there. Is he a safety? Is he a cornerback? It's a little unclear right now. And then you're dealing with freshmen. It's a lot of unproven guys after that, and they're still going to kind of battle it out, see who's going to emerge. I feel like Lineham and Battle are kind of your top two candidates to round out the cornerback group, but it'll be a battle throughout spring camp. I don't think we're going to get a clear read on who that second or even those second and third guys are until we're late into summer camp, to be quite honestly, like with you. If we arrive at summer camp and we feel like we have the Panthers have have a running mate for Rylan Gandy, I'd be pretty surprised. I feel like they're gonna take their time, feel it out, see who those top two guys are, who that second guy is that's gonna emerge, and they'll go from there. But I have a feeling that's gonna take some time. So at least we have something to watch for through the end of spring camp. At least one thing. With that, I'm gonna head out of here. Uh, another interesting day of practice at the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex. The Panthers trudge on in spring ball. They will be off next week for spring break. No practices. We won't be able to update you on anything going on because there won't be anything going on, but we will be at the ACC tournament in Washington, D.C. So make sure to subscribe to subscribe to our page on YouTube, like this video, subscribe to that page for all the updates from Washington, D.C. and the Panthers run through the ACC tournament and as they pursue a second straight NCAA tournament bid. Like I said, thank you all for tuning in. Appreciate you all tuning into another practice report. My name is Stephen Thompson from Inside the Panthers. Check in, signing off. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to us on YouTube. That's youtube.com/@InsideThePanthers, and follow all the reporting at InsideThePanthers.com. Appreciate you all tuning in to another video, and I will see you all next time from Washington, D.C.